everybody. Welcome back. You are watching the FoodTaku podcast. My name is Emily. I'm here with my host, Paul. Paul, say hi.
Hi.
And today we're talking about things that you should never do in Japan. And I'm very excited for this topic. As we know, the country has opened back up. Tourists are allowed in. That means you. Please come visit us.
I know. Give me a year, unfortunately.
Yes, I want everyone to come. It's been such a long time coming, and I'm really, really glad that the country's going to be back open. I think that a lot more stuff will resume, and things have been going on in Japan. I think the funny thing is that a lot of Japanese people didn't realize that the country was closed to tourists, so everyone's
they just kind of thought like, oh, the country feels empty for some reason.
Yeah, no, I think Japanese people have been really enjoying it because all of the touristy stuff that was always kind of like inundated with foreign tourists has now been empty and clear, and everyone can go and enjoy these things in a way that they couldn't before. So I think people have. I honestly don't think people think about it very much. They're just like, oh yay, I can do these things now that I couldn't really do before, and it's nice to see these things, and yeah, and we like this. But
so on that same like kind of topic, did you see the news about how like Kyoto is going bankrupt because they have no tourism? Like, because most of their income's coming from tourism. So when I see stuff like that, I'm like, okay, obviously I loved Kyoto, right? But it did feel very touristy. Like, you go there to do certain things, and it's usually eat, drink, be merry, which a lot of cities have. But I didn't realize tourism for that city was so important. So like, I think I remember listening to, it was either a podcast or something. I think it was Abroad in Japan, Chris Broad. He was talking about how like you could go to Kyoto and it was like you could actually do stuff.
Yeah.
But the only time I had visited was 2008. And when I had visited, yes, Kyoto felt very busy, but not overwhelmingly busy. You know, even I know people say Tokyo is crazy and stuff like that, but I think maybe because I'm used to big cities, it didn't feel overwhelming. I don't know how like how do the other cities kind of pan out for you? Like you're in Tokyo, so
yeah. I think, well, it's hard to say because I came here in 2019 and 6 months later everything
closed
shut down
due
to COVID. So even and I've come here as a tourist before I moved here, and I think that when I was coming as a tourist, I was always coming in off season. I always came over summer vacation, which is a terrible, terrible time to come to Japan.
Is it too hot?
Yeah. Oh my God. It's gnarly. It's really nasty. So as long as you're okay with sweating like a monster everywhere you go, yeah, just all the time, then it will not be any different. But it's just so hot. You get heat stroke really easily. I did.
Oh, jeez. No
Paul,
way.
have I ever told you about the time that I fainted on the train?
What?
Oh, okay.
Oh, so it's hot like that.
This is an excellent story. This is the first time I ever went to Japan. I went for work. I was doing like, it wasn't an internship. I was coming as like a discussion leader for an empowerment program situation. It's complicated. It was just this thing where I was supposed to go and talk to Japanese kids and get them to practice using their English.
Okay.
And we were staying with different host families. I was there for a month. Each week I went to stay with a different host family, and I moved to a different city to like work and run this program with like a new set of kids. So my first week there, I had this amazing experience with this host family. I had a host sister and a host brother, and towards the end of the week, my host brother got sick, and I was like, oh, it's a good thing I'm leaving tomorrow because, you know, I don't want to get sick either. So we left, and the next day I went to Tokyo, and the day after that started getting really, really sick.
Oh, no.
And like fever. It was like a flu,
and this
weird
is
summer flu
So
situation.
technically on a vacation mode too?
Not vacation. I was there for work, but I had to
still for work.
Yeah, so I had to miss work because I was sick, which is, you really don't do that in Japan. That's like super.
Is that kind of taboo? So okay, so things you shouldn't do in Japan, right? Like, I guess
so
in this
things
case,
things you
don't
shouldn't
call
do in
out
Japan. Sick. Yeah, definitely not. We don't do this. I mean, you know, in America, you don't do this either unless you're like dying or something. In Japan, you wear a mask if you're sick, but you keep, like, if you've got a cold, you just put a mask on and go out and about and you do your thing.
Right,
If
right,
you're
right.
really sick, like, throwing up or something, you
Yeah.
should stay home, obviously. But for the most part, if you just have like sniffles or whatever, you just throw a mask on and keep going. I was really, really sick to the extent that I couldn't go to work.
Hmm.
And the days that I did go to work, I had like a mask on and I was just really, really miserable. So this is the whole week that I was in Tokyo, and it was my first time ever being in
That
Tokyo.
sucks.
And
That
so I was sick the entire
sucks.
time. And on our last day there, my friend in the program was like, I really want to go to Harajuku to shop around. Do you want to come with me? And at this point, I was feeling better. So I was like, yeah, I really want to go because I haven't been able to do or see anything at all. And I want to just like see what it's all about. And so we go out and it's hot. This is in the dead of summer. It is hot, hot. Humidity is like 90%, something atrocious. The weather, it's only like 95 degrees or 90 degrees or something like that.
Yeah,
But
but the
because of the
humidity kills
humidity,
you.
it's just, oof, it's so bad. So we do a whole day shopping in Harajuku. And we get back on the train to go. Ironically, we were staying in Akihabara. And so we get on the train, and they're like very opposite from each other on the train line. It's like a 30-minute like trip.
Yeah.
So we're sitting in the train car, and we're sitting, we're not even standing, and we are 2 stops away from Akihabara, and I started to feel like I was going to faint.
Oh
And
no.
and something you should never do on a train in Japan, another thing you shouldn't do in Japan, is like cause a nuisance. Don't be a problem on the train in
Just like
Japan.
pass out casually? Like, is that how
You
it should be?
you like, I would say if you're on a train, so setting aside my story just for a second, if you're on a train, you sit down, you keep your legs in front of you, you don't cross them, you don't extend them, you don't put them where people would trip or fall over them, right? If you're standing, you kind of like get yourself into a corner, you try to like shuffle out of the way, you leave space for people to move around you. You try to be as sort of like orderly and polite as possible so that other people can continue going about their day and you're not, causing them a problem or anything like that. It seems dramatic, but it's just like common manners, common sense. So
Yeah.
I'm on this train and we are sitting down, which is unusual because it's the Yamanote line, which is like the really popular JR line. And I've got people standing in front of me. Like the seats kind of go along down the sides of the train. And then when people need to stand, they just stand right in front of you. So your knees are like right up against their knees, kind of.
Hmm.
And me and my friend are sitting there. And I look at her and I'm like, I think I'm going to faint. I don't feel good. And she starts to panic, like, which is
Oh
fair because
no.
you're in a foreign country and
Yeah.
like this girl that I've only known her for a week, she's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going on. So I was like, look, don't worry. She's like, should we get off here? And I was like, no, no, no. I really want to get to our train station so that we can get off and I can rest at the train station. And she was like, okay. And the whole thing was really unusual because the train cars are air conditioned, so there's not a
Right,
clear
because that's
reason.
what I
We've
was
been on
gonna
this
ask.
train.
I'm like, yeah, how like if
Yeah.
conditions are like that, hopefully it would feel better, but it was probably just from being out and
Yeah.
about the entire day.
Yeah, which it convinces me that it is more to do with my health than anything, honestly. But I know that the heat didn't really help. So we've been on this train for 30 minutes. I was like, I really want to get to Akihabara station so that I can just walk to my hotel, which was like 5 minutes away from the station, and lie
Hmm.
down. Like, that's what I want to do. And she was like, okay. So we're toughing it out. And I am sitting on the train. And what you're supposed to do if you are fainting is to put your head between your legs and to take some deep breaths and all that kind of thing. But you can't do that when the
Oh
train car is
man.
packed full of
Yeah.
people and you're knee to knee with someone already. So I'm sitting there, like, taking some deep breaths, like really trying to hold myself together. I go into this deep meditative state where I'm like, okay, Emily, don't embarrass yourself on this train. You need to get off this train. You can sit down on the bench on the platform. We are not doing this right here, right now. I fainted a lot in my life, so I know the feeling of it, and I was like determined. I was like, I'm not gonna be that girl, not today. So we get to the station, and my friend is like, oh my god, we're here. Okay, let's go. So we stand up, and we are like shuffling past everyone. By the time I hit the doors of the train, my vision, I've never experienced tunnel vision in my life. Today was the one day I've experienced
Oh,
it.
just
My
zeroed
vision
in.
starts to go black around the edges.
Oh
And
my God.
I am just like desperate to get off this train because I don't want to fall on the train. I don't want to faint on the train. I don't want to like, stop the train, cause people problems or anything. So I'm like making a beeline, and we were right next to the stairs to go up. And I was like, I just want to walk up the stairs. I know that there's a bench at the top, and I want to sit down. My vision is just getting narrower and narrower
Oh,
and
geez.
narrower, and all of a sudden, I'm down. I don't remember falling. I don't remember fainting. All I remember is waking up where two Argentinian doctors are holding me, cradling me in their arms, fanning me with this fan that they had, and asking me questions. Are you okay? What's your name? What's going on? I'm like one of them has got my legs elevated because that's what you're supposed to do. One of them is like holding me, like my head up, like, wake up, wake up. They are like speaking to me, and I realize I like come out of my fainting moment, and I realize that they're speaking to me in Spanish. And so I start responding to them in Spanish because at the time I was studying Spanish. And I'm like, hola, ¿cómo estás? And they're like, basically, my Spanish is so bad, but they're like, are you okay? And I was like, ¿Dónde está mi hotel? And they're like, we don't know where your hotel is. And like, my friend is standing there, and she told me later, she was like, I thought I was in some kind of like fever state because you wake up and just start speaking Spanish to these people, and I don't know what's happening or what's going on, and I don't know what you're saying.
You just like transcended your own reality.
Exactly. And the train station master comes over, and they call me a taxi, which is great. And we and I go to the hotel or whatever. They wanted to send me to the hospital, but mama didn't raise. No weak. Bad language,
no.
bad language. Okay? I'm from America. I don't go to hospitals.
We don't go to the hospital. We wait till we're about to be dead.
Hospitals are for the rich. Yeah, hospitals are for the rich or for those in danger of imminently dying. Yeah. And I fainted a lot in my life, and I knew what this was. I knew what it felt like, and I was really embarrassed. By the way, like, things not to do in a train station. Don't sit on the ground. That's a terrible thing to do.
Like literally just sitting on the floor at a train station?
On the floor. Yeah, don't do that. Or on the floor of like a train.
That's not hygienic anyways.
What
would compel someone to sit on the floor of a train station?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like, maybe if you're waiting for a train to come or something like that, especially for longer trains. But don't do it. There's benches, sit down, don't get in people's way. Because these train stations are really organized and really efficient. Mm-hmm. And so everyone is, like, they get off the train and they come and they walk in certain directions. And there's arrows telling you where and how to walk and everything. So I'd fainted in the most inconvenient place possible, which is directly on the stairs. Where people are going up to get, like, out of the station. What I remember is waking up and just seeing a sea of people, like a sea of fish, coming up towards me and just parting and going around me.
Just like completely ignoring you?
Yeah. Totally ignoring me, just going about their day. And then but giving me like space, right? Like just orderly moving around me. It was incredible. And I knew I was being a real nuisance to people. I felt really bad about that. But the station master was so nice, and they ordered me up a taxi. I refused to go to the hospital because they had given us like insurance for the trip, but I didn't have the paperwork with me at the time, and I was afraid. And again, American, and I was like, no, I don't need the hospital.
We have to worry about the $50,000 bill at the hospital.
Yeah, exactly. So that was that. They put me in the hotel, and then I was sick for the whole next week too, and it was not fun.
That sounds like a horrible trip. Not gonna lie, that just sounds like not a good time.
It was really. Oh, my grandpa also died while I was on that trip.
Oh, jeez. Just
now that I'm
just like one thing after the other. What is this trip? And this was when? 2019?
No, this was earlier.
2016?
No. When did I graduate? It must have been in 2014, actually.
2014?
Yeah. That was my first time ever in Japan.
Was that 8 years ago?
Yeah.
That's so crazy to say 8 years ago.
Yeah.
My trip was 2008, so that was 12 years ago. What, right? Is that what that is? Oh my God, I can't math, but it feels like a forever ago.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to how things have changed since I visited, but I also don't have lots of like points of reference, if that makes sense, because I only did that one trip, and the pictures that I have are with like my little Canon little point and shoot camera that barely took video, because at the time smartphones were just becoming a thing. So like there weren't a lot of ways of creating memories other than photos, which are still great, but it's not, to me, it's not the same as video in a lot of ways. But like,
well, yeah.
If you're in this situation, right? And like you don't want to go to the hospital or whatever it is, and you're sick for the next week, like what's the etiquette? Like if that happened now with work, would you still be expected to like come into work?
Well, it's different now with COVID. Okay, so
True.
another thing not to do in Japan, especially right now, especially 2022, I would guess for 2023. And this applies for everyone, whether you're sick or not. Do not leave your mask at home. You should have a mask on.
Okay, and even if you're just traveling and
yep,
okay.
I know that this is controversial, and I know that I know in America no one wears a mask anymore. But in Japan, everyone wears a mask all the time. So there is no law in Japan. There's no mandatory people have to wear a mask. In fact, the government has said if you're outside and you're apart from people, you can take your mask off. You don't need to, but people wear it anyway. People have just do that. And I actually think tourists coming into Japan is going to help people to sway their opinion about that a little bit and make people relax a little bit more, because I know that there's going to be tourists who refuse to put masks on. I've seen them just walking around Shibuya like not wanting to, or inside stores or whatever. But I will tell you that most people look at that and are really like embarrassed for you. They're like, oh my God, this person didn't get the memo. Like this person doesn't know what they're doing, or like, oh, how embarrassing. They're not like paying attention to the social cues happening around them. So it's a double-edged sword, and I think it's up to you kind of in like what you want to do. I would really recommend for people to like look around. If people around you are wearing a mask, you should probably be wearing a mask. Inside, especially, like I think it's a little bit more up in the air if you're outside walking around.
Like,
cause I walk around my neighborhood.
If you're out at a park or something like that.
Yeah. Like I walk around my neighborhood and I notice people aren't wearing masks. On the way to the station, they just don't have a mask on. But especially when you get into more crowded places, I notice like more people with masks on. And then inside, everyone always still wears a mask. So I would, if you're gonna come here, I would just have one with you and be prepared to put it on. Or like if you don't want to, that's fine. Just know that everyone is silently judging you and like
silently judging you. Right.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I'm curious as to, because there's going to be so many new rules for everywhere that you visit. So like in Japan's case, for me, I think a big reason why I pushed off my trip, because it was supposed to come out in March, but I also plan on coming out during Golden Week or part of it, which I hear is a terrible idea.
Terrible idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I just like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to try to come out in the fall of next year. So what that also does is that gives a year of like tourism happening by then. So a lot of the kinks end up getting worked out. Yeah. And it might feel a bit more normal to have tourists come through, because as soon as the news broke, you just see it all over social media of like, oh, bought my tickets to Tokyo. Oh, going to Japan next month or whatever it is. And I'm like, it's got to be so different now. The rules of getting on a train, going to a pub, whatever it is.
Yeah. I would say, I think that's another big don't, if you've been here before, don't expect it to be the same that it has been before. Things have definitely changed. A lot of stuff is still the same. But even in terms of, I was reading this article, because the tourism industry died out, everyone left those jobs. So like they have hotels here, but not enough people to staff them because the hospitality industry doesn't pay very well. So if you're, Japan is all about excellent service and providing tourists with like a wonderful experience, but it's going to be like Europe was this past summer, just way too full of people who are traveling and not enough people to work, like physically not enough people to work. And so I think Japan is going to undergo a little bit of that over the next 6 months for sure.
And you can see that in some of the smaller cities out here. I mean, in the Portland area, it's not a very small city, but like so many people left hospitality work, and then during the summer, everyone is out and about. Everyone is doing stuff because it's gorgeous outside, and it's the Northwest in the summertime. No one was staffed enough to like account for how busy it was going to be, because everybody was let go, or those restaurants closed or whatever it was. And it's like, how do you recoup from that? Because I came from the restaurant industry and I came from the hospitality business. It's like seeing an influx of people when you're understaffed is so hard to deal with. So incredibly hard to deal with. So I can only imagine for maybe like a city like Kyoto where it thrives on tourism, like how drastically all of that changed now, you know, versus like maybe Tokyo survived a little bit better, you know, because maybe other people are traveling in from other cities of Japan to like come to Tokyo. But I don't know. How have you seen it so far?
I think what is interesting is, yeah, it's actually been really depressing, if I'm being honest, to just watch businesses close and just disappear. And I haven't noticed it so much in Tokyo. Tokyo has kind of remained vibrant, more or less, but you kind of see it in Shibuya a little bit. There's just like at night, you're used to having a lot of tourists around, bopping around. If you go at night in Shibuya, like a month ago or 2 months ago, it's just a bunch of like 20-something-year-olds plastered. And it's kind of depressing to look at, actually. It's like kids with nowhere to go and nothing to do, and they just get really drunk on the streets of Shibuya and just like sit there because everything has closed really early. Like, that's kind of what we experience here. Everything closed early. For a long time, restaurants
wouldn't sell
at like 7
p.m. or something like that.
Yeah. And so, but Japan is not a city where you stay home, you know? Like, Japan is a country, not a city.
Yeah.
Tokyo is not really a city where you stay home. Like, if you live in Shibuya or Shinjuku or something, you are relying on like the city atmosphere of the restaurants being open and the bars being open and stuff, because like a lot of people's apartments are so small that's, you know, they go out a lot. And since all of that closed during the pandemic, it just kind of became kind of sad to see people have nowhere to go and nothing to do. Yeah. And in terms of tourism, Japanese tourism, like in Japan, Japanese people love to visit places in Japan. So like I would say like more so than even America. Like I don't think Americans love to visit other states as much as Japanese people love to visit other prefectures. And like I think
that's pretty true. That's pretty true.
Yeah, and I feel like there's certain like vacation spots in Japan that everyone knows about and really wants to go to. So there are some areas that have really thrived and like, well, they've done okay. Like they've hung on. Like for example, if you go to Niseko up in Hokkaido, which is like a very big skiing area, that's like where you get the best snow in Japan, that area has managed to do okay. But even still, they are struggling to keep staff on and keep people employed, because there's just such a less number of people that are going. But smaller places even that are like kind of podunk out of the way places in Japan have really, really suffered. And like early on in the pandemic, when the government was really trying to get people to go out and sightsee and stuff, me and my friends took advantage of that because they were offering insane deals, like 50% off of your entire trip if you go to X, Y, and Z place. So we were taking advantage, and we were literally in some cases like the only people staying in the hotel.
That's wild. And
it's just kind of depressing. You kind of don't realize how fun it is to be around other people until there are no other people there, and then you're like, this is what a zombie wasteland feels like.
No, it's totally kind of like, even out here, but there was a lot of, you know, in the States, there's a lot of backlash around those rules of whether or not, like, we would visit friends in certain states, like, not going to name any, but like you'd go out and this is middle of maybe like 3 or 4 months after the pandemic stuff and closures, and no one cares about mask rules. Cause like, nope, you know, we'll just deal with it. And it is it's obviously two completely different cultures. So the way I see it though, it's like how do you recover from that, right? Like closing, so like livelihoods gone basically. And it's kind of sad for me to think about, because like coming from that industry, it's so hard to thrive anyways. And then something like that happens and you're like, what do you even do? The only thing is like, if you survived all of that, then you come out the other end way better, because now you have a huge customer base because you were open for people potentially. Out here, the places that really thrived were like the food truck scene, because they were smaller, like mom and pop shops. They could do a lot of to-go food. People would pop in, order small things, and then they built this customer base up, and now they're like growing. right? But you are right though. Like out here, no one wears masks anymore, whether or not it's indoors or outdoors, for better or worse. But it's still what I've seen is that the restaurant and the hotel industries have bounced back very quickly, where you have restaurants now paying people very well to be there. You know, one of my really good friends, she's making almost 6 figures a year as a server at a nice restaurant. Like,
wow,
it's wild, right? Because people are going out and they want to spend money. It is a nice restaurant. You know, the average check is like $150 for 2 people.
Right.
And they're very busy all the time. So, but you're talking about you're a server and you're making like engineer money.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's really cool to see that bounce back, but on the other end, it's really sad to hear how like some places haven't been able to kind of like push back and like win that, right? That sounds kind of where like it's at right now for you guys.
Yeah, it is a little bit, but I think the good news is people are coming back, and I think that a lot of business here are really, really excited about that. I'm really excited about that.
I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. As much as I've loved kind of being here and living here with no tourists for the past 2.5 years, that's been really, like, I'm never going to have that opportunity again. And I'm going to miss it, but it's going to be great just to have things happening again and opening up again. And that brings me to like another don't in Japan. I think that when people come here, don't sleep on having portable Wi-Fi or something like that.
Oh, I remember you telling me about that. Yeah,
there's so much to do and to see here, and it's very I personally don't think it's easy to get lost, but if you've never been outside of America before or whatever, I guess it could be a little bit challenging for some people. If you have internet with you, it makes all the difference. And these days, there's stuff like eSIMs that you can get, like eSIM cards, where you don't even need to go anywhere or carry a device with you anywhere. You can just pay online and download an eSIM and have access to Wi-Fi. And that's so helpful for like Google Maps. It's really helpful for Google Translate. And I think with those 2 apps, you will
such
get
a game changer
around.
because when I visited, like this is gonna date me, right? But like I had a paper map, right, that I took everywhere. It was in my back pocket. Had a paper map, and I remember researching the places I wanted to go to in each city. Yeah. So I would have like the paper map, and I would circle just about where like the restaurant I wanted to go to was, or the record store, or like, and then if I couldn't figure it out, I would like, because obviously all the computers in like the capsule hotels were all in Japanese, so I didn't know how to use them. So I was using like a PlayStation Portable to search for stuff, right? Because you could hook up to the Wi-Fi somehow.
Dang,
and like
that's creative, man.
That's like what you had to do, right? Like I remember, okay, so this is like Tangent City, right? But like when I was traveling out there, records and CDs were still very, very big, right? And I remember getting really into like electronic dance music at the time, and there was a Tower Records, I think it was in Roppongi, maybe. I don't remember. I think it was Roppongi. Go up there, I buy a couple of CDs, and I remember going back to my capsule hotel. I was able to use the public computer, and I popped the CD into the computer, navigated my way around Japanese windows, and was able to download all of the music from the CD to my PlayStation Portable.
Dang.
And then walk around listening to music. I was like, damn,
dude,
I felt so good.
Yeah, that's like infinity brain.
It was like such an accomplishment. And but now when I think about it, I'm like, oh my god, like imagine like when Rachel and I were in Scotland in 2019, and I'm sorry, 2020, right before everything closed, and everyone spoke English, like the Queen's English, right? So it was easy to communicate. But the game changer, honestly, was like a SIM card. We didn't have eSIM, so you just bought a SIM card with data, and we used it for maps or to like look up restaurants or whatever, because sometimes you didn't have Wi-Fi access. And now thinking about it, you're right. Like, don't sleep on like portable Wi-Fi. Right? Don't sleep on SIM cards.
It's so important. It'll really help you out. It's not very expensive, and it will just let you get the full experience that you want. You know, there's nothing like there are some people who, when they travel, they like to plan out their day 100%, and I used to be like that. I'm not anymore.
Yeah, I don't do that anymore.
Yeah. I'm in the moment. I'm in Akihabara right now, and I just checked out this thing, and I really want somewhere good, and I want to be able to pull out my phone and just Google like best restaurants near me, and then like go to the one that looks like it's got
Hell
the highest
yeah.
rating.
That's that's the best way to travel.
The Google review game here is insane. So Maylin from Geeks Plus Trash Taste, you know Maylin.
Yeah, the
boss.
The boss lady.
She's like a professional Google reviewer.
I feel like
her.
I heard that. Yeah. At
yeah,
some point.
I love her. I could have worshipped at her feet. I think she's so amazing. She just goes around to restaurants trying them and leaving reviews, and she's in like the top 10 or 5% of people in Japan leaving reviews at restaurants or something. So
that's so
you never
crazy.
know. You could run across one of her reviews if you go out and look for restaurants in Japan.
I love that. That's one thing I would love to do out there is just like restaurant hop, right?
Dude,
so not bar hop. I would restaurant hop and just love to like do reviews. But because I love doing it on video, that's another thing. So, okay. So is this something you don't do in Japan? You don't film without permission, right? Is that a rule? Or can you kind of like, okay, so I've heard things from people about like if you have your cell phone and you're just kind of like, oh, you're doing a thing and nobody cares. Yeah. But if you bust out like a DSLR, they're like, what are you doing? Why are you filming stuff?
Yeah, I think there's a level of covertness in Japan that you should employ. I think it's kind of depends on what you're doing. If you're out there with a DSLR and it's very clear that you're getting footage, I think when people see such a big camera, they are kind of thinking to themselves like professional. Like this is someone who's doing a professional thing, right? Because it has that feeling with it of like, oh my God, they've just brought like a camera bag filled with equipment. Like, what are they doing? What are they trying to record exactly?
Right.
And in that case, I would either like put myself in a corner where like no one is doing anything or looking at me, or I would just explain to them like I'm recording for this or for that or whatever.
I am YouTuber.
Yeah. If you're recording someone's face, that's a no. Don't do that. Don't do that. You should ask for people's permission if you want to record their face, or if you want to record someone doing something, like you're in a restaurant and the server's bringing you your food, like you should ask if that's okay. You should not just pick up a camera and record people. I think that's true of any place you go, whether it's in your country or in a different country. Like, you don't have the rights to film someone else doing something. If you happen to catch people on the street like walking around you, that's one thing. But if you're purposefully recording someone performing an action that you're gonna be like showcasing, you need to ask
I'm going to ask a selfish question because, but I also think anybody visiting might garner some knowledge from this. Is that would you recommend even bringing like a professional level camera, maybe for photos or something? But like, is it just better to bring the latest iPhone or Samsung or whatever?
I think it depends what you want and what you're going for. But personally, if you're just going, I wouldn't. If I'm being honest with you, I've done the DSLR thing in Japan. I've schlepped cameras and stuff around. I just want everyone to remember, there's no space in Japan.
Right.
Like, this is a don't assume that there's going to be a space for you to put all of your things, and that in like a restaurant, like obviously a restaurant can accommodate your purse and your coat and whatever. But if you're hauling around a bunch of stuff with you, there's just not space to set that up usually. Like, there's no room for a tripod, and there's no room for you to be moving around and getting in other customers' way, and people will not like it if you are inconveniencing other people.
No, that makes sense. It's just being like a decent human being at that point, and you're not the center of the universe kind of thing.
Exactly.
Because when I go out there, I definitely want to do food reviews. So we were trying to figure out the logistics of like, okay, do we just buy the latest smartphone, spend the money, which are usually the same price as like a freaking DSLR these days, right? But then it's a great phone. It's a great camera. You can just use like a dongle for audio, and then you're set. And it's almost professional grade. And then we would have just a camera for, like just on the side.
I would almost recommend that. It's just easy. It's more transportable, and it's more covert. People don't look at that and think like, oh, they're recording something for a TV show. They're just like, oh, this is a tourist doing their tourist thing, recording whatever. Or YouTuber, like you're like an online social media person.
Have you seen, speaking of using like photography equipment, like in a different country, in Japan in this case, have you ever seen Best Ever Food Review Show? Have you ever seen that YouTube channel?
I've heard about it. It's so familiar to me.
You should binge it. It's fantastic, right?
Yeah.
But they did an entire series in Egypt
Mm.
where all of their gear was commandeered. They landed
Oh.
in Egypt. They had a fixer, so they
Yeah.
had someone helping them, and it
Mm.
just everything fell through. They had
Mm.
like 60 grand worth of equipment just commandeered,
Dang.
and they had paid apparently about $100,000 to get their team there to do a 2 week
Wow.
thing in Egypt.
Wow. Yeah.
They did the entire series on iPhones, and it was beautifully done.
Great. Yeah.
So I'm
yeah.
like, all it takes is a little bit of creativity
Yep.
and
Yep.
some covertness. Not to say that you're trying to do anything shady, but like if I want to do a review of some sushi, I
Yeah.
don't really want to bust out the like giant camera with like
Yeah.
the wide lens or something. It's gonna look pretty,
Yeah.
but is that necessary?
Usually, I think usually not. And if you're going to, I would ask them and let them know why you're there and like, hey, I'm recording for this purpose.
Mhm.
Best ever food review show? Okay, wait. I've been to Egypt and I was not impressed by the food at all. So I'm gonna have to check that out.
He said he did really like the food,
Oh.
but yeah, there were words said about like how they were treated, even
Yeah,
after like
yeah.
having permission to film and stuff like that, because every country is different. If you
Yeah.
come into a place out here and you bust out a DSLR anyways, like into a restaurant, they're also going to be like, hey, can you not record in here without
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
permission? It's the same rules for the most part. But then as maybe a tourist, or in my case, like as a creator, I have to consider, hey, maybe I should get the table in the corner where I'm filming and like it's just the wall behind me.
Yeah.
Like have a little bit of like common sense in that regard,
Yeah.
where you're not trying to stuff a camera in anybody's face. And that's because
Yeah.
I hear that's a big no-no, because privacy is a big deal in Japan.
It is a big deal, and it's just rude,
Mhm.
I think that sometimes, I don't know if we want to get into like the politics of this, but I think sometimes
Oh,
Americans,
politics
particularly
bad.
when they leave the country, they just think that everyone is like a prop in their life,
right.
and like, oh my God, look at this person, like, look at this like old man, he looks so authentically old in Japan. I'm gonna take a picture of him or whatever, and it's like, okay, like that's not
Because,
really.
well, I think it's because public laws out, like if you're in public, then you can take photos or whatever, and what is it, like rules of privacy change or something like that. I don't know, but like you can assume that people are filming or taking photos or
yeah.
whatever because you're in a public space. But other countries might not have those rules or social norms. So if you're like perfect example, if you go to a convention in Japan, right? An anime convention, if you want a picture with a cosplayer, you line up individually, and then you take your photo, and the next person in line. Whereas in the US, it feels like everybody just swarms and does like this half moon thing around them and then takes photos. Completely different social cues and norms.
Yeah, and I think like tying into that, another don't of when you come to Japan is like, don't assume that there's no like set way to do something or to experience something. Japan is an extremely organized and orderly country, and everyone operates around this understanding that there have been rules put in place, not only to ensure everyone's safety, but to ensure that people can get the best experience that they want. So if you're at an event like a cosplay event or something like that, I think sometimes, especially like me, an American, is always looking for a way to be like, oh, okay, like how do I get what I want? How do I go where I want to go? Where Japan has already put rules and like a path in place. Like there's arrows on the ground pointing you in a direction. There's a certain order of operations in which you should complete something. There's a certain like series of steps you need to take before you can arrive at this point. And you'll notice this, the more you spend in Japan, the more you'll notice this. Like if you go into museums, there is like a route that they always mark out.
Which
in
I did
American
notice,
museums, American museums, you just go and you like walk around and see what you want to see. In Japan museums, you go on a set route, like an order that they have for you to experience everything in, and to go out of that order is a little bit weird. Even in my grocery store, there's no like arrows on the ground, but there's a really clear path that they want you to move
that
in.
people
and if
will actually
Yeah.
take.
Yeah, and if you just stay still for a minute and watch people go, you'll see everyone sort of taking it and kind of going around.
Interesting.
And the minute you go against it, it starts to like become a problem for people. It's like a hassle for people because you're going against it, and there's not enough room. It's always like there's just not enough room
Right.
to like maneuver around people all the time. So And I say this too. I remember telling my dad this, like, when you're in Japan, if you think you're lost in a train station, you're not lost. Just stop and look around. There will always be a sign telling you which direction you need to go.
No, totally.
Always.
And I experienced that in Shinjuku Station, I believe it
Mm.
was, because it's just
Yeah.
such a massive, crazy station
Mm-hmm.
that at one, like, I was just, it was my first like night or two there, and I'm like walking around. I was like, wow, what is all these things? And then I realized I had no idea where I was walking, and I
Mm.
just kind of stopped and I looked around. I was like, oh, exit sign, and just followed the exit signs until it spat me out onto a street, which is not the street I needed to be on, but at least I was out of the station,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
was what I wanted to accomplish because I was just meandering anyways.
Yeah.
But like you're absolutely right. There's it never felt like I got lost,
Mm-hmm.
even in a big city like Tokyo,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But I also felt like traveling out there are a lot of landmarks, whether or
Mm.
not it's a building or a park or a shrine or anything. And the way I was traveling out there is kind of like how, you probably travel, where you don't have anywhere you need to be at any certain time, but like there are things you want to see. So
Right.
however they happen, they happen. But I just remember it was Harajuku that has the big shopping
Mm.
alley, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
what I would do is, okay, go down the shopping alley, and I'm like, okay, I would walk down it, and I was like, okay, the alley's behind me, so I'm gonna go right. And all I would do is in the back of my mind, like, okay, the alley is this way, so the train station is also this way, and then continue walking, and then it's easy to find that alley again because it's so congested that
Yeah.
okay, found my way back, and then head back to the train station, right?
Yeah.
That's how I traveled out there. So you're right. It's very hard to get like straight up lost in a lot of those
Mm-hmm.
cities, even as big as they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that kind of brings me or reminds me of like another maybe like don't thing to do in especially in Tokyo. Tokyo and Kyoto and Osaka, I think are cities for this. When you're planning what to do each day, don't think that you can get across the city very easily or in a
Mm-hmm.
timely manner. So like don't plan to do a morning activity in like Harajuku for example and then an afternoon activity in Akihabara. You can do those things, but you'll spend a lot of time on the train and often I think it makes more sense in Tokyo to pick two areas of town that are adjacent to each other
Mm-hmm.
and spend the day like start in one and then walk over to the next one and explore. Trains are really fun to take in Japan, but I also think that the experience of walking through
It's
Tokyo
so
is
much better.
really fun.
It's so
Yeah,
much better.
yeah, you just get a really cool sense of like how people sort of live and you get to see how like the houses kind of mix and mingle with the city stuff and you get to walk through some really beautiful quiet neighborhoods kind of depending on where you are
Mm-hmm.
and so I think that a lot of people are like, oh yeah, trains, they're everywhere and we can just hop on one and go wherever we need to go. And that's true. If you really have things you want to do across town, you can do that. But like don't sleep on the just taking time to like be in a place and explore and really try to see what's going on in a particular area. Try the top rated restaurant in the area or, some like a cafe that you stumble upon or something like that. I think that that is a really fun way to experience Tokyo that I think because when a lot of people come here, they're trying to hit off all of these like things to do,
Right,
and I
right.
think that exploring specific neighborhoods is just a
You
really
lose.
cool
I
way
feel,
to spend your time.
I feel you're like 100% correct on that, because like I feel like you lose a lot when you just go boom, 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 take the train and just you're done,
Yeah.
right? I kind of saw that the first night I was there. I walked a bunch and then I bought the skateboard and like I started skating around, which is probably against all of the rules. But I did it anyways because I just didn't know.
Yeah.
And being on something with wheels, whether or not it's
Mm.
maybe you rent a bicycle,
Mm-hmm.
potentially a skateboard. I've actually been looking into like electric skateboards, and I don't
Yeah.
think they're legal out there. I have to do more digging, but like being able to just hop off whatever you're on, or whether or not you're on foot, you'll discover so much more. Like
Mm.
you will find the little coffee shop that probably serves like the best coffee you've ever had in your life, but it's
Yeah.
not near a train station. You got to go
Yeah.
find it. Like the major places are going to be closer to stations, but
Yes, and that reminds me. Like 2 weekends ago, 3 weekends ago, I went to meet a friend in Sangenjaya, which is an amazing neighborhood to explore. It's where Persona 5 takes place. So if you
nice.
guys are honestly, if you're looking for an off the beaten track place with some really cool kind of like old school Japan vibes, Sangenjaya is an awesome neighborhood for that, and it's not very touristy. I don't think. in the same way that like Shibuya is, and it's just down the it's like literally one express stop away from Shibuya. Anyway, put that aside. I went to meet my friend there for lunch one day, and we ended up spending like the afternoon together, and we just started at a little cafe, walked down the street a little ways, found a place to eat for lunch, had a little bit of lunch, kept walking down the street, found a dessert shop, stopped for a slice of cake, and along the way we just passed through like two really big neighborhoods. Songenjaya is right next to the big thrifting district, and I always forget what it's called.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
But it's where you go for like it's where you go for like major thrift store, and it's like Shinokubo? I don't know. I forget. But they're right next to each other, and just walking through, it was so fun to see all the little shops and stuff. But then you also get like you get into these really popular places, and you kind of have a purpose. Like we were looking specifically for like cake or coffee or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it was really fun.
I love that because like when we were in Scotland, we did just that, where we knew we wanted to go to a few spots, but then anything in between was up for game. So we would just, there was this one where we were on Queen's Mile, and Queen's Mile is very busy, right? It's in Edinburgh. It's very touristy, but we wanted to go explore it. So we just walked down Queen's Mile. We popped into a whiskey shop, or a Scotch, I should say, shop. And we were there for like an hour talking to the owners there about all the different scotches and stuff like that. And he started talking to us about like what they're kind of speakeasies, I guess, in a way, but like things only locals know. And he's like, hey, I like you guys. Like, I want to let you know that this bar, literally whatever, 2 blocks from here, 3 blocks from here, is doing a, what's it called, per pour. So like they crack open like a $300 bottle of scotch, and they sell per ounce. So like if it's 100 ounces and it's $300, it's $3 an ounce or something. They don't upcharge anything. And like you don't know that, right? He's like, they're about to open the bottle. I literally just heard. And so and it's funny too, because as we heard, we started walking. He's like, go grab a chocolate brownie from next door, and then walk to this, because you like eat the brownie and drink whiskey, right? And as soon as we started going, at first I was like, they're walking really fast in the direction we're walking really fast, right? Like, it's this different group of people. Like, oh, it's probably just coincidence. And sure as hell, they opened the door for us to the bar we're all going into to like go get amazing. This scotch.
Yeah. And
you don't experience that, I think, if you're just kind of on an itinerary, right? You don't get those memories of like, oh, you remember that time we like Home Alone ran it to a bar to go get, like, you don't have that.
Yeah. And you're totally right. And that brings me to, I'm just full of so many don'ts, things not to do in Japan today. But I would say, actually, surprisingly, like, don't pick the foods that you want to try. I think it's good to have a general list of like, I know I want to eat ramen, I know I want to have sushi, I know I want to do this. But when you go into like a ramen shop, I would say, like, don't try to finagle and be like, oh, I want the Naruto, or like the ramen that Naruto had, or I'm going to specifically look for that. I would pick like the top rated sushi or ramen or whatever in the area, and then go in and ask the people what the recommendation is. And in Japanese it's osusume. So like, just go in and be like, osusume wa nan desu ka? Like, what is the recommendation? And you will have some of the best food of your life if you just follow the recommendation. And this is because in Japan, especially for a lot of smaller like mom and pop shops, they have one dish that they are really good at making. They're just amazing at it, and that's what everyone comes to eat. And they might sell other stuff. You might notice other things on the menu that like looks good to you, but it'll be that one thing that they recommend that's like the thing that you should be eating. So, and that's how a lot of shops work. And you'll go to like, if you want ramen here, not all ramen is the same. Most ramen shops, unless it's a chain, have their own special thing that they do. So walk in and ask them what that special thing is, and then order it, and you will have some like really cool experiences and be able to try some new stuff.
Yep. I think I had that exact experience in Kyoto. I was staying at the Hyatt that was in Kyoto, and behind it, maybe by like a block, right? It was basically behind the hotel. It was a small mom and pop shop with one one chef, Masta-san, and then the mom was serving people. And the first night I went, I ordered yakisoba, and it was delicious because I like literally pointed to a picture and he made it for me. The next night I went in, I sat with another group of people who were English speaking, and they had gone up to him, and it's like they probably said that like what is it?
Osusume.
Osusume, right? They're probably just like, make whatever. He made me my first okonomiyaki I'd ever had, and it was just top tier. I devoured it over like 2 different pints of beer, and you don't. It's weird because as someone who we're foodies, like there are only certain things that I'm picky about, and it's usually like textural things that I can't do, but like I'll always try something, and I feel like you lose, especially if you're visiting a different country that has very different foods than what we have here in the States a lot of the times. Yeah. Just embrace it. At least for a little bit, right? Like try the thing. Don't say, oh, well, I'm going to go to Japan and I'm only going to eat chicken on a stick, which is delicious, right?
But
maybe
there's so much more out there.
Yeah. Try a burger with some fish on it or something.
Yeah, I completely agree. And coming to Japan has made me a more adventurous eater, I will say, because I've never had a meal that misses in Japan. I've literally never had a single meal. Let me think about this. Yeah, I don't think I've ever had a single meal. Oh, okay, I take that back. But okay, well, we'll get to that in a second.
Maybe one meal.
I've never had a single meal that didn't hit. That was like everything I've eaten here has been really, really, really good, and stuff that I didn't expect to like, I've ended up really liking. Like when I came here, this is maybe a really common experience for anyone who likes sushi, but maybe like American sushi where like everything inside is cooked and there's no raw fish or anything anywhere. When I came here, the only raw fish that I would really eat was like tuna or salmon, and that was kind of it. And I was just never really tempted by anything else. And coming here and trying what other people recommended for me has been such a game changer, because now not only do I know tons of different fish, but I really like them and eat them in a way that I wouldn't before. And that's been really, really fun. So yeah, like just come and try. You know, most food in Japan here is really inexpensive as well. So you're almost never risking a lot by doing something, and just know that you can always, this is kind of like, it is rude to like not eat your food. So if you order something, kind of just sort of, depending on where you are, know that you maybe shouldn't not eat it. But yeah, just, no one's ever going to force you to eat anything. You can try something. If you don't like it, you can leave it. And I will say, don't skip convenience stores, because oftentimes
convenience stores are tops.
Convenience stores are a really good place to kind of try these things. So like maybe you've never had, I don't know, what's like,
let's just say like a steam bun or something.
Maybe you've never had a steam bun before. You're not really sure. You can buy it. If you don't like it, you can just throw it away in the trash can there. You don't have to eat it. And
it's also inexpensive to try stuff like that.
Yes.
That's the kicker.
Yeah, and that's a good place to go to just try stuff that maybe you've never had soy milk before and you're curious if you're gonna like it. You can get a little box for like $1 at the convenience store and give it a sip and see what you think, and then just toss it if you don't like it. There's no one there that's like, there's no one there that's judging you. So just, I mean, usually.
Usually somebody's watching you. Like they're gonna finish that, they're gonna throw it away. I like that recommendation a lot, because it kind of takes away the friction of trying new stuff. Where yes, it can, like, eating out can be expensive, even in Japan from back when I had visited back in my day. But it's like I was probably spending between $7 and $10 a dish on average, right?
Yeah.
And that's for like a full meal, not just like a snack or something like that.
Yeah.
Where now it might be a little bit more expensive, but I don't see it being that much more. And even then, like if you don't like something, you're spending $7 to $10, and you're on a vacation potentially. So it's not a huge deal. Right. But I did go to a 7-Eleven every day and I bought a bao bun. I bought a steam bun because they were like 75 cents.
Yeah. Like, how can you not?
Like, how can you not do this? Like, instead of getting the really crappy rolled hot dogs on a griddle in 7-Eleven here, you can go get a steam bun. I'm like, this is magical, and I literally did it just because of the novelty that I could do it.
Yeah.
And so convenience stores, don't sleep on those.
Yeah.
I want to ask, what would be let's say, because this is hard to think of one, your top 2 do's before visiting Japan. Because we talked a lot about don'ts, which did have some do's in there too. But what would be the things, like the 2 things you would say you should do while you're there and before you visit?
Okay. Before you visit, I personally think the best way to travel is to I think that it's good to have a little bit of a plan each day, like a general idea of what you want to do. So before you visit, depending on what city you're going to be in, I would pick for each day kind of the area you want to be. I would pick one thing you want to see in that area, one like can't miss thing, and I would pick one food you want to eat that day, like one kind of like food experience you want to have. And then when you get here, I would really recommend, like, in between doing those 2 must-do things that day, you spend your time exploring and being spontaneous. And, like, as you're walking down the street and you come across, like, a weird store where everything, like a weird, like, photo spot where everything is glued to the ceiling is upside down, like, go in and have fun and, like, have a spontaneous memory there. So that's my best recommendation for travelers, and that applies for, like, any country. So before you go, kind of have that in mind. I would also, before you go, I would have your, I personally like to camp in a city for like a week or something. So I know I'm going to be in Tokyo for 5 days. I would plan my like day trips out of Tokyo, because those you need a little bit more foresight for. You can't just be as spontaneous with those. So kind of know what you want to do if you want to do any kind of day trippy thing, and know the logistics around that, like the opening hours, when you need to go, because you might need to do that, you know, on a specific day, as opposed to, you know, just being able to wander around Harajuku and kind of explore it for the afternoon.
To piggyback off of that,
Yeah.
like you said, plan out where you're staying, because like a stupid 22-year-old that I made reservations in Tokyo, but not Osaka. So I just went from Tokyo, and I was like, I'll just figure it out when I get to Osaka.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
an old school way of doing it.
Yeah,
but
I was very lucky that I was able to somehow get a hotel room for one night in Osaka, but I was there for 6, and so I just stayed in a capsule for 5 days after that.
Dang, dude.
Same
That's
capsule.
rough.
So yes,
okay, so
plan those things out.
I will say too, Japan is a country of reservations. They like it when you make reservations. They accommodate reservations. So if you are going to be a place that you know needs a reservation, make it before you come, or make it like day one when you get here, because stuff fills up really fast a lot of times. And if you're traveling with a big group of people, this is even more important. Like, you need to make sure that you kind of have that stuff planned and ready to go if you want a specific experience. If you're just going to be bebopping around, walking around, enjoying, you know, easy like little chain restaurants or convenience stores or just whatever's on the street, that's fine. But if you want like a specific dining experience, you need to make a reservation, 100%. And if you want like a specific activity experience that you know requires like a ticket or something, make a reservation for that if you can.
Gotcha.
For sure. When you get here, I would say, first of all, just have fun. I think people get really stressed out by traveling, if I'm being honest, especially if you're trying to like sightsee and stuff. Don't take anything too seriously. Go with the flow. Every time I've traveled my whole life, I've done really strict planning traveling where I plan out every moment of the day. I've done no planning at all. I've done like a nice in the middle kind of thing. The times when you're just there and you're open to having fun and being present with your friends are way more meaningful than when you're trying to like hit everything on your list and stress out, because it always means that you and your friends are just sitting there on your phones trying to like plot your next destination, trying to figure out how to get from A to B. You waste time, people start getting crabby, and no one's having fun. So be open. Japan, and especially Tokyo, is just such an amazing place to explore. You're never going to go wrong. And if you just want to have fun and make some memories with your friends, just be open to letting stuff go and enjoying the moment and kind of being present.
I love that. That's a great thing to end it on. That's a that's a great like just kind of travel advice in general. I think that's perfect because
yeah.
that's what I'm going to do when I'm out there, aside from trying
Yeah.
as many anime cafes and maid cafes to my detriment.
Yeah. And if
I
you
love
see
that.
me on the streets, say hi. Come up to me and
Yes.
say hi. I would love to chat with you and ask you how you're going and give you a recommendation or something. And just, come, have fun, be friendly, be excited.
Eat
It's gonna be
everything.
A great time.
Eat everything and then tell us about it because we want to know. There are spots that you've never been to. There are spots that I've never been to. So
exactly.
we could combine all of our forces of knowledge into like how they have the Frommer's Guide. Maybe we'll eventually have like a community food taku guide.
Dude, that would be awesome.
That's
That'd
sick.
Be awesome.
That's an idea. I'm gonna that's gonna be on my whiteboard soon. Like the food
let
taku travel guide.
Let us know
like
in
a
the comments
community
below.
built one. That's sick. I love this. That makes me excited. Yeah,
let us know in the comments below if you want something like that because we would love to do that for you guys.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
But guys, follow us down below for Patreon, TikTok. If you want to check out our episode 0, it's on Patreon down below. We have a full playlist of all of our episodes up to this one so far, and we pretty excited to get to next week. I have so much to do before I come to Japan next year.
Haha.
Yeah.
But you're coming eventually, and you guys should be coming eventually too. And that's all. Make sure to follow us and have a great day, you guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.